Women doctors, we hear you. We know your struggles. We know what it's like to be a female doctor in this dominant world. And guess what? Dr. Summer Kassmel and myself teamed up together and created Women Dentists Connect. We wanted to create a safe, educational, and inspirational place to come and ask those crazy questions that you don't want to ask. We know that being a female doctor is different than it is for male doctors. You just have different issues, different questions, different concerns. So Dr. Summer Kassmel and I are actually hosting a live event in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona on October 11th and 12th. This is for women doctors and their teams. We're talking business. We're talking issues that female doctors face. We're talking team breakouts, how to really rally your team. And we're giving you hundreds of tangibles that you can take home and implement Monday morning. We're also having an amazing lineup of speakers where you'll actually get CE for attending. So come on in. We can't wait to see you. We only have a handful of people that we're allowing in. So run on over to womendentistsconnect.com. Use the coupon code podcast to get the Dental 18 family coupon. Guys, I cannot wait. I would love to see you there. I'd love to connect with you, learn from you, and share. So hop on over Women Dentists Connect. I can't wait to see you in October. Welcome to the Dental 18 podcast. We're your hosts, Kiera Dent
and Dr. Mark Costas.
Mark and I had this crazy idea that maybe we could combine a dentist and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. And Dental 18 podcast was created.
I'm a practicing dentist, a multiple practice owner, a dental performance coach, and the founder of the Dental Success Institute.
I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, current practice owner, and international dental consultant. Mark and I don't just understand you, we are you.
Our goal is to positively impact the world of dentistry by sharing our lessons learned from the road in hundreds of dental offices.
Two perspectives, one mission, to help dental professionals reach their full potential. Welcome to the Dental 18 podcast. Hello, Dental 18 listeners. This is Kiera, and you guys, I am in beautiful country mountainous right now. Summer and I are driving to Lake Tahoe. So I've got Summer in the car. And of course, as a good friend should, we're going to podcast because that's what we do.
Actually, we would do it normally. It's just that we'll put microphones to our mouths while we were just normally going to be, what we were normally going to be talking about.
This is true.
Anyway.
This is true. Summer and I are good friends because we can sit here and just like brainstorm a billion ideas and then like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And it's really fun because I feel people tell us a lot of times like your guys' brains move really quickly and you guys are real quick, and we really are, and I love it because we can just go back and forth. So Summer said, while we're in the car, we can actually truly riff together. And I'm like, yeah, we are. We're going to do it today.
Yep. We do it anyway. Now we'll just put mics to it.
Exactly. So Summer, you had a really great idea for our topic today. If you want to introduce it, I think this one is so needed amongst teams, and you do a great job with your doctor and teams. So let's dive into your topic today because I think it's fantastic.
Well, so one thing that Kiera and I were talking about is so many team members get really caught up in just the day-to-day minutia. And so they have a hard time amidst all of the phone ringing and the note taking and the patients in, patients out, cleaning rooms, flipping them over. Just, we all know just the flurry of activity that's in dental offices. We get bogged down in that a lot of times we don't have really good priorities as to, as I like to say, like what's going to be a win of a day? What does a really, truly good day look like so that at the end we all know and can celebrate, we had this win of a day. And so I was telling Kiera, one thing is like the art of prioritization and recognizing in the course of a day, how do we train ourselves as team leaders? How do we train ourselves and how do we train our team members to know what are the biggest priorities amidst all of that whirlwind? I mean, I don't know, Kiera, do you see in most offices that just tends to be hard for most offices?
I would say just in human beings in general, it's a hard thing to do. Like it doesn't even have to be a dental office. I mean, when you were saying that, I was like, yep, guilty as charged right there because I get caught up in them. I mean, let me answer all my emails and let me make dinner and let me make this and let me fly across the country and let me do like things that aren't necessarily a priority for that day, but they just come at me. So I do them reactively instead of proactively. So absolutely constantly. And also I think it's, we dodge around the things that are actually harder per se. We don't want to do them. And so we prioritize things that are that aren't going to move the needle forward as quickly, with things, thinking that we're busy. And so we're using our time. We're staying busy. It's not like we're just sitting there doing nothing, but we're busying ourselves with things that maybe don't matter as much or shouldn't happen at that prime time of your day.
Yes, we master the urgent and we tend to negate the important quite often, I find. And I totally agree with you. It's so much more fun and easy to check things off of the checklist than to actually take those really big tasks that we know would probably move that needle forward. It's hard to want to sit and be quiet and still with those and work on the game plan for getting those done. It feels like if we're not doing, we're not accomplishing. And it's hard, right? To sit in that space of doing deep work. It's really difficult. So how do we get it to where ourselves and our team members start recognizing, how to move the needle forward on a daily, weekly, monthly basis so that we get to the end of that month, that quarter, that year, and we can see some big changes, big moves in a positive way? What are some ways that we can help them do that?
I think you should share your ideas, Summer. You've got some really, really great ideas on this one. So let's share with this.
So by the way, this drive is absolutely just gorgeous. I have to come back here. This is
you do.
So beautiful.
We just passed the Ritz-Carlton and it's in the most stunning zone, guys. It's beautiful here. So if you have not been to Lake Tahoe, Summer was like, well, I don't really have to see it. And I was like, oh no, you absolutely do. I'm prioritizing your life for you. This is an important thing.
Yes.
It's not urgent. It's important.
Yes, you do. You're here. You're this close. You have to come. So
how do you do it with your team, Sam?
Yeah. So one thing is we have to honestly sometimes just know where they're at. And so for us, we do, much like Mark has kind of talked to us about, we do keep time journals.
Okay, talk about that because Mark wants it to go for like 3 days every single. How do you do it? You have a lot of employees, so how do you guys do it? And how often? Let's talk about your cadence.
So I will say that we have we just had a person in our practice do it who was kind of in a position that was starting to get a little bit ambiguous, and she was getting probably a little frustrated to some degree because she didn't know if she was making traction. So we said, first things first, let's see where you're spending your time. So it's been great. So it was for 1 week. So for her, that's actually, she works 3 longer days. So it is for 3 longer days. She kept a time journal, and we have this paper that has been printed out, which has literally every time of the day. And it's like,
do you do it per hour? Do you do it per 15 minutes?
I believe it's per 15 minutes just because there really are some tasks. But we did find, she's spending a lot of time seating new patients. And that's just one example. And I remember thinking, wait, that might not be working. Why don't we have a hygiene sterile tech who could probably fit in and do that and actually make it quite a bit more efficient in her position and free this other person up about an hour a day, we figured out.
Wow.
Holy smokes.
That's a lot.
So I think time journals are probably, for us, they've been the best way to start because you don't know where to go if you don't know where you currently are.
Sure.
And so time journals have been great because then you can see all the things that aren't actually moving the needle and delegate, or sometimes we X them out. I always joke with my team, it's like continually buying new clothes and packing your closet full and never getting rid of stuff that you don't wear anymore. So a lot of times we just keep putting stuff in without ever really thinking, is what we've been doing still working and still providing the service, the wow, the value that we've been hoping for? And we found that sometimes we're like, oh shoot, we've been doing this and it really isn't moving that needle. It really isn't giving the experience we want. So we'll have to X that stuff out, and then we can kind of rearrange what's in the closet. So
sure.
Go ahead.
That's a really, I like that. And I like that analogy of we keep adding more because we think, add more, make a new system, be more efficient. But do we ever go back in time and look to see everything that's been in there? Because at some point we put a system into place to make things more efficient. But at what point is that system still efficient, or has it no longer stayed efficient? I really, really love that idea. And I like that you say you do it 15-minute increments, because sometimes people feel like, that's just so much work. But it is work. But also then you can see the patterns for real as opposed to projecting and assuming.
Yes, absolutely. So you see where where your starting point is. And then it's like, okay, this is all the stuff that I try to get done in a day. Well, once you know what you're supposed to try to get done in a day, are they actually doing the stuff that's going to be the most important for, as we've discussed on other podcasts, and so have you, Mark, and other guests of, are they part of the KPIs? Because those KPIs, those key performance indicators, are built to move the needle forward. So are the daily tasks helping that person, fulfill what they need to get done in that day. And at the end of the day, does that team member know they fulfill the KPIs and they can truly leave that day saying, awesome, wow day, I won it, perfect. And so that's kind of where we start. That's how we then kind of reassess, okay, do we need to redelegate, like I said, or whatever? Do we need to unpack the closet? And then we reprioritize those tasks for them. So in conjunction, so a lot of times it's the team leads plus that team member. Okay, we now recognize that we can take all this stuff out, but here's the top 3 things that need to get done and need to get done by this person. Mm-hmm. Recognizing that there's going to be just whirlwind, crazy activity that has to happen, of course, but we need to make sure, is there time in the day to focus on the tasks that will make a difference? And one thing is, and this is a struggle for us as well, so I can't say that we've somehow got it down perfect, but what we have found is if we can give people true, what I like to call focus time. So in that week, is there a time period of even 1 hour in the week where they can sit and focus on the actual important? They can close the door and focus on the important, make huge strides towards, for us, it's our accountability goal. Can they make strides there so then when they come to those accountability meetings, they can truly honestly say, did you get this done? Yes, I made, a big movement in the needle by getting this task done.
I like this a lot, Summer, because as you were saying a lot of these things, I was thinking back to, I think it's important to talk about people's journeys, because I think back to you 2 years ago, and I don't feel when I met you, there was a lot of chaos and crazy going around as any practice would have. But what I really think is admirable is in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, it's 2 years today, believe it or not, since I first walked into your practice. So this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But what I think it shows is that you really honed in, and something I think you do really well is you hone in. You actually, I remember when I told you, put some office hours up on your door where you can shut your door and you can have focus time. Just because I was watching, you would start a lot of projects, but you'd never have time to finish them because people kept walking in and out of your office left and right. So you had a lot of quote unquote time, but it was always interrupted time.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, I think you've done a really fantastic job of simplifying. If I can say, I think the biggest change I feel that I've watched you do is ownership. And it's hard. Biggest is unfair because there's so many big things or greatest things. So I would say maybe one of my favorite things that I've watched you do is that you've really simplified and honed in on what's actually truly important. Because I think what happens is we think that by busying it or making a bigger schedule or a bigger to-do list or a bigger end of day that we're being more productive because, hey, we're keeping our team members busy. But you've actually looked to say no, it's actually just these 3 items. And these are the 3 items that you really need to work on. So their job description is so much simpler. It's so much easier for them to really know. They're not guessing and wondering. And I feel so between those 2 things of you yourself taking that focus time, then giving that focus time to your team members, and then also simplifying, making it as simple as possible. And I feel like every time I talk to you, you're always working on how can I make this simpler and really more efficient to make it get the results I'm really looking for, not just busying and cluttering their lives. But that's my angle. I don't know if you agree or disagree or actually, what your thought is.
As you were saying that, I'm like, yes, spot on. Because truly, it was Kiera who when she was in my office was like, you just leave your door open. And so you're working on something and people were constantly coming in. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? And that did 2 things. That made it to where I was accessible all the time to anybody for everything. And my natural way as Kiera is I want to solve the problem and get things resolved. So I would always take that upon myself to solve every problem and try to get it resolved. Mm-hmm. And what's funny because it creates this sense of they need you, which probably as women you want to be needed to some extent, but it really creates maybe an imbalance of and taking away from them that opportunity to grow and learn on their own and become more empowered team members. And so it was you who was like, what if you actually put up the times that you were available and they respected those times. And even since you left, I've even honed that in even drastically as I've added kind of more to my plate. I've had to be like, okay, yes, I've got to do it. I've got to set those boundaries even clearer. And it's led to exponential growth because I could focus. And so it is a gift to be able, like you said, to kind of give that to team members. And I wish I would say we've got it down pat, but just as you said, every dental office is so busy, so much, activity that it can be tough to maintain, that 1 hour a week per team member. But if it's possible, I think it has been something that has made it to where we did make huge leaps. So I am grateful for kind of somebody saying to me, like, you may be way too accessible and you think it's a gift to them, but really it's taking away them being empowered, and it's making it to where you're not really getting anything done. You're spinning your wheels.
And I think like team members, be okay to have that conversation with your team member. Obviously, say it with a lot of love, with a lot of caring. But Summer, I also think it's interesting, and I'm guessing these two things are connected, that they're not just causation, but they're actually correlation with each other. By having that focus directed time, I've actually seen you also in the last 2 years. I don't know, because I don't know your practice prior to me meeting you. But I would say in the last 2 years, your practice, your company, your business has exponentially transformed and gone to higher heights than it ever would have done. And once again, like I say, like, did these two things correlate together? Did they cause? I would venture to guess, because my elite practices, the ones that are the top of the top of the top that I see, this is what they do. Their team members have time 1 hour a week. And guess what, guys? The world is not going to crash down if your OM is not available for 1 hour a week. Like, it's not going to happen. And if your dental assistant is not available for 1 hour a week, your business is not going to fall. Mm-hmm. But I would say, Summer, by you doing that, once again, I'm not sure, I'm guessing here, but I kind of think, because I'm seeing the pattern across the nation and across different offices, that when offices are truly intentional, they take this focus time and they know what they're supposed to be doing with that time, you hit massive growth because you're focused on what needs to be moving the needle forward. But once again, that's a guess. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think there's been definitely several factors, but it gave me the space and then it gave me the clarity. So before, when you're constantly being interrupted, it's just like going to the grocery store with your kids. Like, you end up with stuff that you didn't even mean to put in your basket.
You don't even know that's there. Like, we bought SpongeBob. What?
Yes, I don't want more gummy bears. And so I do think, like, exactly like you said, it more than anything, it gave me real clarity, and I could sit and focus on what I knew mattered, and I could create that plan, and I could create my action list, delegate appropriately, hold accountable, all the things, in that space. So I think it absolutely is correlated. I also love, and I think you were exactly right, I think maintaining a sense of simplicity is also really important. We both have a friend who's a dentist in Colorado, who I won't say his name, but he is also magical with the bigger he got, the more he simplified. And really, I just love to see amazing people and just emulate them.
Right. We chatted about that, right? When you say, well, how do you want to get somewhere? You find the people that you're really, really drawn to, and you start to mimic and mirror who they are.
Yes. And that's where I've taken my team leads down to his practices and really watched. And one of the things I loved about him is he recognized the need to not overcomplicate. And I joke with my team, it's like putting a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid, when really there's a gushing wound underneath it. Just rip all the Band-Aids off, get to where, kind of like that time journal, where are you really, really at? Get totally, okay with wherever you're at, and then figure out, let's stop the Band-Aids, and let's really, because we don't want to hurt feelings, we don't want to have a hard conversation, just get to where you're supposed to, where you're at, and recognize where you want to be and what's the simplest way to get there. The less you complicate it, the easier your team has with remembering what's important, why it's important, and where you're going.
I love that so much, because there's so many pieces and so many visuals in there of, I say it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. It's not really solving the problem, but I also like that we might have 20 bandages on that broken leg instead of realizing the bigger issue is this. And you reference a lot one of your favorite books that you and your team read, of No Ego. Because I think sometimes in practices that I see, they get very scared to be direct or to prioritize, like, help somebody help you build the list of their downtime protocol, but be okay as leaders to reprioritize for someone else. Sometimes somebody outside of your world will help you prioritize better than you can yourself. I do this all the time with Kaylee. I will say, Kaylee, I'm in the whirlwind. I don't know. And I'm just going to go to my emails because that's my default go-to easiest spot to go. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Direct me to what the most important thing is. Dennis, think of when you walk out of a room, you have a lead assistant, hopefully, that's directing you of where to go to maximize your time in the most efficient way, because they're not in your head. They can see more efficiently where to go. And leaders, by you seeing, and don't be afraid to reprioritize someone's list, because a lot of times people start working on the least important thing with their time, as opposed to the most important And I always think if you could only accomplish one task every single day per person in your practice, what would that most important task be? And Summer, I love how you just said, what would be a win of a day? And I mean, for some people, it's getting out on time. For some people, it's hitting their numbers. For some people, it's getting a high five from their patient. Like everybody's win of the day is different. But I really love that you sink into that. You make it so simple and you're not afraid to reprioritize people's lists when they need to be working on something different. How do you have that conversation though, Summer? Like how have you done that in your world? Because I think that that's a big piece leaders need to do.
Right. Well, and honestly, I think the first thing, and we've talked about this, is I'll take ownership for it. Like when I had this position recently that I recognized she was getting overwhelmed by minutia, and I was not necessarily seeing results because I hadn't. The first thing is I look at myself and I say, I don't think I've got it really crystal clear defined. I don't have everything figured out fully as to what I want exactly that position to look like. So I added to that chaos. So I had to get really clear with this is what I want. This is what I want it to look like. And this is the win of a day I want for you. Then we time journaled, got rid of the extraneous stuff, ripped off all the Bandaids. And now we're going back through as, okay, this is what should be getting done. This is going to streamline things so that you know at the end of the day, you've figured out all those tasks. So having those conversations is really being able to go through the time journal, me marking out the stuff that I don't think is important, and then having that feedback conversation. Like we discussed, it's kind of having that loop conversation of those crystal clear expectations, having protocols set in place for them to be able to track it, having that system audited, and then having feedback. Maintaining that position for about 3 months, as we've discussed, but really then checking in. Okay, how are we feeling? Is this working? And are we getting the results that we want? Because unfortunately, we love to, as we just read in one of our books, like we love to focus on time and effort, but really, when it all comes down to it, we've got to focus on the results. You can spend tons of time and effort and not really get anywhere with traction. So that's kind of how we actually, work through things. And when we have that conversation, it's really a mutual conversation between the team member, because honestly, they feel better when they feel like their job is more honed in and they know exactly what's expected. Well,
absolutely. I think all of us, without realizing it, sometimes we say we don't want to be told what to do or we don't want to be micromanaged. And I mean, you can be the child that's like, throwing a temper tantrum, but end all be all, we really truly actually want clarity. I've found that so many times with people that when you can give clarity, simplicity, and we actually know what our doctors are looking for, we can have a win of a day and nail, like really, really, really nail the expectations you have for us and feel like we walked away as heroes instead of zeros every single day.
Yes. And that's what I feel like is, this poor person was kind of spinning her wheels, really feeling overwhelmed. And so much of it was that lack of clarity piece for her. And knowing at the end of the day that she was doing what I wanted, and making a real result for the office. And so that's where I think as doctors, once again, as I've alluded, we really have to take ownership of that. And the other thing is, like you said, we can't expect our teams to read our minds.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I can't tell you how many doctors are like, I wish they would just figure this out. And I'm like, if you don't verbalize it, sorry, none of us are you. And that's okay. I used to tell my doctor I worked for all the time, I was like, if you could just realize I'm not in your head and I didn't have 7 of those conversations that you thought we had together, that would help a lot.
Yes. And I hear that a ton too with doctors of like, my whole team is it's just frustrating. Why don't they just get it? And I'm like, well, have you ever actually spoken the clear words? Because if not, that's kind of that first piece. But I also find, and Kiera and I were just talking about this, that a lot of times we as the doctors, we as the owners, we have to process through it and really make sure we're clear before we then go and tell our team members. Because sometimes when we're talking, we're brainstorming. And so we've got to make sure that when we go to them, we've got these crystal clear kind of expectations. And it's okay. I was talking to another female doctor. I said, it's okay if you set these clear expectations, do it for 3 months, and then you need to recalibrate and let your team know, hey, in 3 months, we may find this wasn't exactly what we anticipated. And that's okay. Let's go ahead and together, we're going to come up knowing what my big goals are. We're going to kind of tweak that and do it again. That was version, 2.0. No problem.
And I like that you say that because you're setting the expectation. We're going to try this out. I'm going to give you a win of trying this for at least 3 months. So you don't feel you're constantly being changed and evolved with me. You're actually going to learn this. And then from there, being crystal clear on and making sure those expectations were set clearly, on making sure they know what a win is, on making sure all those little pieces are there for them. I think those are huge, huge, huge takeaways for any doctor, any team member, any leader, any person in your life. Make sure it's crystal clear and there's clarity and simplicity, and then we prioritize accordingly.
And, I think I was just thinking when you were saying that, like if I was a team member, I'd be like, well, what if I have a doctor who just doesn't necessarily do that? Like, I think that there's ways as team members of when a doctor talks to you and you're not clear, it's kind of fuzzy to you. I think absolutely saying, I love what you just said. Can you paint a picture for me what having it done well looks like? And that's something that our team was just going through with this book that we're doing. What does done and done well look like in your head, Dr. So-and-so? That way you're kind of getting into their head without them having to kind of initiate that conversation. So as team members, there's ways that I think you can kind of take ownership of that situation if you have a doctor that has a hard time communicating.
Absolutely. And I love that, Summer. I love that you just gave some tangibles. And another way that I have also done it, because sometimes I don't remember to ask, like, what does a win look like? I've said, like, hey, this is what I heard when you said it to me. Is this what is this what you had in your mind too? Or what piece am I missing? Because then it gives both, that's active listening. That's not passive listening. That's going to set both people up for a lot more success and happiness, as opposed to sitting here with constant frustration because we don't know where we're going.
Yes.
So, Summer, I think that was so good. We have just arrived at beautiful Lake Tahoe.
I'm taking pictures and podcasting and being a passenger. This is awesome.
Summer now understands the car casting world right now. It's awesome. So, Summer, thank you so much for your tangibles, your takeaways, and team members. I would say try those time journals. Do it for 3 days. Prioritize your list. Don't be afraid to reprioritize, and then have those conversations of what does done and done well look like? What are the two differences? Use a lot of these tangibles. Doctors, make sure you're crystal clear. Did you have the clarity? Have you spoken that clearly to somebody else? And if not, maybe take that challenge on and see if you can do that yourself. So those are my takeaways, Summer. Are there any last takeaways you had?
Yes. No, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head as far as, I think, knowing where you're at right now and doing that time journal is kind of that first step. And then taking out what's not working anymore, getting rid of that stuff out of the closet, reprioritizing with your team member what's going to truly move the needle forward, and literally writing it down. This is number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3. If you get those top 3 done, even if you don't get all the rest of the whirlwind stuff done today, that's still a win of a day. So really helping them understand on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, what are the big things? And then finally, if you can master the art of giving focus time, get that focus time piece in there so each of your team member can really work on their downtime activity during that hour that's going to really affect and move that practice in a positive way. I think for me, those have been kind of the things that tend to work well for me personally, and actually that I have seen work well for team members as well. So
absolutely. Summer, as always, it's fun to podcast with you. So thanks for car casting with me today.
So fun. Such a beautiful place.
It's going to be so fun. And guys, we're going to leave you guys and we're going to go see beautiful Tahoe. And thank you as always. Thank you, Summer. Thank you, listeners. Thank you guys so much for leaving your reviews, for sharing these podcasts with people that you think could help them and benefit them. And thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time on the Dental 18 podcast. That wraps it up for another episode of the Dental 18 podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.